Welcome to Accounting Life with Jotham Ty. Our guest today is Jennifer Kyle, CEO and founder at Condor. In this episode, Jennifer discusses the unconventional path that led her from a career in industry accounting to public accounting, and ultimately to launching her own software company in the biotech space. Jennifer shares how embracing change, following curiosity, and solving tough operational problems helped shape her journey. Now, our host, Jotham Ty.
Hey, Jen, welcome to the Accounting Life podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Jotham?
I'm good. Pretty excited to talk about life science and biotech accounting. How about you?
It's a riveting conversation.
Riveting is a good way of putting it, but you know what? There's a lot to learn about the industry, to say the least. And I know to those that know it well, it's information, knowledge that's incredibly special and valuable. But we also have an audience with a wider mix of like accounting industry and accounting background and experiences. So I think this is a good chance for us to share with them your world, Jen. So, maybe to start off, like, can you tell us about your journey and, how you got started specifically with life sciences / biotech?
Well, I will say, especially for the folks that maybe are just starting their careers, right? Or thinking about pivoting in their careers, either into accounting, out of accounting, or into another industry segment within accounting. My career was not a straight line, and it was not planned or mapped out. If you would have asked me 10 years ago if I would have got into biotech accounting or even created a software company, like in another universe, right? So everything in how I got started was all kind of accidental, they're coincidental, right? And an element of fate and doing something that you're passionate about that you like doing and trusting that it's all just gonna align how it's supposed to. So my career, started I started in accounting and finance in industry, and then I accidentally made my way into public accounting in a very unconventional path into Ernst & Young, and became an auditor and had incredible experience at Ernst & Young. And then I left Ernst & Young thinking I'm going to be a CFO, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to climb the corporate ladder rings to get to that ultimate position. And as I climbed, I was finance director. I was a controller. I led finance teams and functions. And I had realized I don't want to do this. I don't want to be a CFO. What I really like doing is solving problems and making business processes more efficient and effective, and using data and being a change agent, right? And that's what I loved. And that's where I added value anywhere that I went. So I said, hey, there's a lot of companies that have a lot of backlog projects that they need cleaned up at the intersection of finance and accounting and operations. I'm just going to go in and do that. And my very first call to a client was a biotech company. Mm-hmm. And they needed a consultant to come in and help them clean up, fix their clinical accrual process. And that was really my first experience looking under the hood of all of the stuff that goes into biotech accounting, other than being an auditor, and just seeing a sandbox of opportunity of things to fix. That got friggin' boring. And now here we are, what is this, 7 years later, with Condor, that builds a whole, automates the entire financial management for life sciences.
Knowing your product and having mutual customers, we know what you've built there is incredibly helpful and valuable. And, we hear so many great things about your software. And, it's interesting, Jen, we kind of have similar paths, or at least like the whys, right? You mentioned wanting to be in a position to solve problems. That's definitely the reason why I got out of public accounting and audit to the consulting side. In my case, it was SOX. There was this brand new problem that needed to be solved. Like, how do you stand up a SOX program for the first time? And then, from there, another problem to solve. And then, by the time I know it, I've started a software company. So yeah, it's pretty cool how we have similar stories. And I think that's why we kind of connected, pretty well since we first met. But, just going back to biotech specifically, I think what's fascinating about it, Jen, is it's actually to me, it's closely tied to like things in life that are incredibly impactful, right? Like these biotechs are working on incredibly like new and like amazing tech and drugs that changes people's lives. Like, is that something that, resonates with you too? That there's supporting a company on the accounting side, software side, but that company that you're supporting is doing amazing things in the world. Does that hit you too?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think as I was solving this in the industry, working for biotech companies as a consultant, I actually had a couple of personal experiences with some close family and friends that had cancer. And being able to be working for these oncology companies that were bringing clinical trials, bringing new medicine into these clinical trials that were ultimately going to save lives was highly purposeful, right? And it really connected beyond, you know, why do consulting, even why start a company. It was really, to your point, this is going to help the world. Like we're playing a foundational role in bringing new medicine to market. And we're doing that in a very cost effective way because we see what happened with the insurance companies, right? Look at the cost of insurance. Look at the cost of even like some of these medications, right? And these insurance companies hold all the data. And by democratizing the cost for pharmaceutical development and building that transparency for all instead of just a few number of vendors that hold that information, we're preventing that from happening so that drugs aren't going to be too expensive to develop. And that is the direction we were going to go in the industry unless a solution like Condor came up with good intentions to really build that financial transparency around the market.
100%. And I mean, when I think about some of our customers who are going through like clinical trials and actually just business in general, right? Like if you're not able to execute your budget and have good visibility on the dollars that will drive this discovery because you don't have software or automation and something like a Condor, that could impact the success of that trial in a material way. So, I know obviously in accounting we look at it from that lens, but I mean, you can't say there's no direct correlation between successful execution of a trial, including finances, and its part in helping get a powerful new drug or medicine in the market or device.
You reminded me of something when I was consulting and working with these organizations many years ago in accounting role, right? Initially, I came in to get clinical accruals more SOC compliant. That was it. Like that was the problem. That was the use case. And oh, by the way, can we use this data to help with financial planning and our forecasting and all of that? And as we unpacked, this process and were able to bring financial visibility and that control, we had realized that these vendors were overcharging the biotech companies by millions of dollars. And accounting, it was kind of like you'd ask accounting and they'd say, well, ClinOps knows best. They're the ones that tell us like how much, like if our CRO or our vendor is overcharging us, our ClinOps team is going to catch that. But if you ask the ClinOps team, they're going to say, well, that's why we have accountants, right? And so I wanted to wring the neck of some accountants sometimes where I'm like, you should be adding value to your company. It's not okay that your CRO just overcharged you by $5 billion. That can pay for a phase 1 clinical trial. And we see this with small biotechs, like that number is not trivial, right? It's pretty significant. And I think we have fiduciary responsibility is accounting and finance to be that strategic partner for organizations to help them manage their costs, and where there is savings, reallocate that savings to future uses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we accountants have to be, to your point, that strategic partner to that line of business. And, even with that mentality and mindset, it's still not easy, right? From what I hear from the neighborhood. So, clinical trial accounting or biotech accounting in general is typically very challenging. And, Jen being an expert in this field, wanted to ask you, like, what is it that makes it complex and challenging? Is it technical accounting or systems?
You know what? It's all of the above. So I would say When I talk to some other folks outside of the industry that don't have intimate awareness of it, I always say there's two things that drive the innovation in biotech. One is the science, and the second is the finance that funds all of that science. And the science is highly unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen in the clinical trials. We don't know how we're going to be enrolling patients. We don't know how they're going to respond to the drug, right? And it's going to change the protocol. So there's a lot of unknowns and unpredictability in the science. But I always say, although that is unpredictable, how much money we're spending, that's just math. That is predictable, right? So because of that, I think oftentimes we get so lost in trying to understand the science and trying to chase the numbers that we're lost in the weeds and we can't see the forest. And I kind of, narrow it down to three things that really make it super complicated in biotech, all because of those high-level elements in the industry. One is there's disconnected systems, antiquated tools, right? So you've got your ClinOps team that's going to use a whole lot of databases and systems. And then you've got the accounting and FP&A don't have any insight into. Then you've got your accounting ERP that, good luck, ClinOps is not even going to log into that, right? And then you've got FP&A, right? That accounting doesn't even necessarily have visibility to, and ClinOps is also not going to do it. So you've got three different departments using three different data sets that also don't understand each other all that well. And so I would say, between that siloed functions, between the disconnected systems, and between the language and the knowledge gap between those areas, that is where a lot of that complexity of you're chasing numbers, you're trying to figure out where are we at on the clinical trial? How much is this vendor supposed to be charging us? And then to add the fourth complexity of the element, you can never trust what the vendors are giving you. They're also wrong. So nobody knows how much we're spending and nobody's talking to one another and nobody's using a shared source of truth. And then to make matters even worse, it's a significant audit risk or a critical audit matter for a lot of these companies. If you're a publicly traded biotech company and you don't have revenues, and most don't, that's your critical audit matter. So now your auditors are saying, what are you doing to get comfortable over what your vendor is providing you, over what these estimates are? And you can't just say, ClinOps told me so, right? Like, you ultimately, in finance and accounting, and the CFO in particular, is signing the financial statement, which falls under your umbrella.
Ooh, I feel all that, Jen. And by the way, I've never asked this question before. So now I feel like I've got a better sense of why this is not easy. And I'll recap some of this because I think it resonated with me. Went to your point about you don't know how trials are going to go. It's not like any other business model. Well, most business models, I should say, with SaaS. It's a recurring revenue stream. Even when you sell widgets or services, there's some seasonality and level of predictability. But with these trials, it can go anywhere, right? And the impact to the business, depending on those results, varies so much. And of course, you and I can talk all day about how FP&A, accounting, ClinOps, we all speak different languages. But to make matters worse, they're in different systems. That sounds just problematic by design. So, I'm really glad that automation platforms like yours exist to, bridge a lot of these gaps. And, maybe sticking to that topic, Jen, obviously you're in the innovator space. What are some of the challenging pain points that you've heard outside of, what we already described, just the siloed and, the different data sets? What are some of the other pain points that's common for you to hear in the market?
Data wrangling, just frankly, data wrangling, right? You've got to get data from all these different systems, and then you got to validate that data, and you got to get data from your vendors, your partners that you're working with. You got to validate that data too, and you got to combine them, and then they're going to send you updated data that you got to validate again, and then the numbers are changing. So it's just getting all of this information sometimes is just very time consuming, and as soon as you have it all, it changes, and you got to do it all over again. So the data wrangling, that's what I call it. That is one of probably the most just time consuming manual challenges that I see. And that's something that, Condor solves because we've got this full, tech stack and architecture where we know, okay, these are the systems that you're using. Here's how we ingest that information. Here's how we organize it. Here's how we bucket it. Okay, your vendors, you're providing information in this format. We've got you, right? We're going to ingest that information and we're going to bucket it. And then we're going to verify them and we're going to connect them. And then we're going to tell you when things don't seem right, right? So we do that. We automate a lot of that list for you. The second is, and these are generally folks before they come into Condor. And that was one of the reasons why Condor exists today, is very large, complicated, erroneous workbooks. So if you think about this space, right, there is every vendor has a contract. And when you conduct a clinical trial, every clinical site has its contract, right? And so you can have big trials that have 300 sites. There's 300 contracts, 300 budgets. And guess what? There's a tab for every single one of those sites in a workbook that somebody is going in and manually updating. And when you have that many tabs in a workbook, good luck making sure that everything got updated. So we see just inherently a lot of, misstatements on estimates. And that's one of the triggering points of why we get called at Condor to come out and explore solving that pain point for them, because they were off on their clinical accruals. Maybe their auditors found an adjustment because there was a missing link in a workbook or a bad formula and it didn't get caught. And you could have all the trend analytics in the world, and sometimes it just doesn't catch everything. So, as you know, especially in a SOX environment. So that's another one. And then also the third thing is the reporting and scenario planning. So going back to the unpredictability of clinical trials, when you work in this function, you've got a budget for your clinical trial, which is often over multiple years. Your trial can be 2 years, it could be 5 years. And you're going to be budgeting for that full thing, right? But then you've also got corporate budgets that are annual on your fiscal year. And you have to translate that study budget into that corporate annual budget. What does it mean if I'm going to be under budget on my study budget, but over budget on my corporate budget? Like, sometimes it's very easy to get lost in that too. And forecasting and reforecasting, and then doing your actual to budget and actual to forecasts and actual to study budget, right? So being able to do a lot of connecting all of this reporting together. And if you make one change in a clinical trial, how does that impact the program that's a cluster of trials, or your portfolio that's a cluster of programs, right? One change over here can have massive impact downstream over here. And so you want to show that story and immediately you want that in real time. And then you need to be able, if you're an FP&A, right? You need to be able to say, well, we're over under expectations because of X or Y. And it's very hard to do that in a manual environment.
Well, I put our own CEO hats on, Jen, and how we also want to understand what's going on in the business, and imagine it, to your point, having two different budgets that don't talk to each other. And not only that, but these budgets and activities being driven by these large workbooks with so many tabs that are sensitive to formula issues. I think you've really encapsulated why this is such a big challenge. And, it's no surprise that the accountants that I met in the industry, it's no surprise to me that they're the most intelligent people I also know in the industry. But, thankfully with software and unifying these data sources and streamlining and connecting all this data, that's why I think, Condor, I think you guys are positioned so well to address this problem in a very wholesome way. And I think it requires that, especially given the gravity of the business activities. Just concepts in general.
We're only trying to cure cancer, man.
Literally. I love that. So, maybe as you wrap up, just two last questions. One, I can't let any guests off the show these days without asking AI, but whether it's AI or maybe any other trends that you're seeing in the industry, Jen, What are those trends that you're picking up these days?
Certainly AI is one of them, and happy to come back to that. I think a couple of other trends that we're seeing, and this is pretty critical for the industry, specifically for biotech and pharma. 5 years ago, it was just okay to figure out how to do it your own way. And it was okay to confirm with our vendors, book that if you're a publicly traded company, but you have to have a lot of documentation around why that estimate was okay, right? And nobody really had a good solve for it. And we all knew this as auditors, and I knew this as a consultant and talking to all of the big four firms, right? And I think now that, and actually on that note, we know this is harped in our brains as accountants. Your financial estimate is only as good as the information that you have at the time available when you were making it, right? Mm-hmm. And with the tools available. So there was that CYA of, we didn't know any better. This was all the information we had available the time that we booked this accrual, and that's the accrual that we're booking, right? What has fundamentally shifted in the industry now is with technology that actually can give you that level of precision, that CYA doesn't work anymore, because there are now tools available that will give you that level of precision that otherwise did not exist before. And that is, even though it's a subtle trend, it's pretty significant that we're seeing in like widespread market adoption within the industry and big four adoption, right? Where now if you've got a critical audit matter, your auditors are going to say that you should probably look into software. And that is, and I'm so happy, and that's the ultimate validation, because I mean, I was screaming this to the auditors years ago. We were doing this in Excel, and I'm like, there's a better way to do this, guys. There's a better way to do this. And everyone just, old habits die hard. What did the vendor say? What did the vendor say? We know that it's wrong, but what did they say?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's similar, actually, even like beyond biotech. There's the scrutiny around accruals. I mean, I don't know. Macy's definitely did not like bring it to this level of like, but yeah. It's been something brewing all along, right? Like, obviously, like getting confirmations from vendors is a good data point, but if the underlying calculations or other supporting estimates that you compare it to aren't there, like some auditors are gonna ask for that now. So, just about a year ago or a year and a half ago, we released Beyond Confirmations, just a way to do an analytical estimated calculation of an accrual. And you need more data points to support whatever stuff your CROs or your vendors are reporting to you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, you definitely need some kind of analytic and trend that you can use to justify or corroborate what that vendor is sending you.
Exactly.
But I think on the AI front, that's a really exciting. I'm here for it. I love it. So I think just in general, like I find, and I don't know how your experience is, Jotham, I find that people generally fall on a spectrum of AI adoption, right? You've got on one end the industry laggards, which are, they're not into it until everybody is. They're like, I'm going to wait. I want it to be good. I want everybody to adopt it, and then I'll start tinkering with it, right? And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've kind of got the pioneering front that's proactively using it and like, oh, what tools are out there that can make my life easier, that can help me communicate, or, for whatever reason. And I'd say generally most people fall somewhere on the middle. I think if you were to look at like a plot chart and a cluster of the plots in our industry, or accountants in general, are probably the more towards the lagging side of the spectrum. And some of them tinker over on the other side. And for me, I don't know how about you, but for me, as an entrepreneur bringing new technology in the market, I'm on that pioneering front. I'm like, how do we make things better? But also, my background, which was all about how do we make business processes more efficient, more effective? Well, we employ technology, of course. So this is an awesome time. I'm loving it. How about you?
I mean, I think this is a great time to be innovating in this space. And yeah, you touched on it. I mean, I think AI is not only a tool for our customers to leverage to make their jobs easier, but also AI tools internally for us gives us the ability to innovate faster for our customers. And just trying to gauge though, like what the industry is ready for, and how quickly to deliver new AI technology. Of course, that's the math that we all have to work on. But yeah, there's no question about it. To your point, there's definitely people now like being open about adopting this technology as they should, and it's all just about timing. And for us, like we've got a long roadmap now of different ideas. Thanks to AI that we can introduce to the market. And in accounting,
Yeah.
you and I know there's never enough solutions out there. And so AI gives us a chance to take a big whack at that list.
Yeah. How I look at it in general in Condor is there's three key categories that you can really leverage AI. One is going to be on that data wrangling, that contract ingestion. That's kind of easy. And from an accounting perspective, as you employ that AI to help automate a lot of that ingestion, you still need your own processes to validate that that was complete and accurate, right? Data inputs, it's going to be critical for any system that you use that spits out numbers at the end of the day. Um, the second, and this can be used across your entire organization for other uses, which is the LLM, right? The language models, and that's on the communication. If you recall earlier, we were talking about a language barrier between the clinical teams and the accounting and the FP&A. So if you need to talk to clinical about, hey, help me understand why this vendor is charging X more than I would expect, right? Well, you can run that into a language model and ask it like, why does this happen? Or how do I communicate with my ClinOps partner on this situation? Give me some talking points, right? So being able to drop those barriers, language barriers, I think is a great win, no matter if you're talking to an auditor, if you're talking to your CFO, if you're talking to your ClinOps partner, or if you're talking to a vendor. And then the other one that I'm especially interested in, so the LLM I love, and we're building our own LLM that is specific around the clinical data ingestion and normalization around the finance side as well. But on the machine learning, right? Looking at all of those trends and predictions and analytics, and how much is it going to cost to get my drug to market? How much should I expect to spend next quarter? Right? Being able to get very smart and very precise on algorithms that are learning on top of each other, and not just in your own organization, but across the entire industry. Right? If you're an oncology stage, the oncology therapeutic area at a phase 2B clinical trial, and you're going to be, working out of Asia Pacific, right? To be able to have the level of precision to know exactly how much that's going to cost based on all of the other data and all of the other biotech companies doing oncology, operating out of Asia Pacific. That also comes back to bringing the financial transparency and controlling ultimately that cost of getting your drug to market, which is critical for all of our benefits.
Right. And I mean, that data all exists. So albeit maybe sometimes in different places, but the data is there to drive this level of intelligence that you just shared. And we are at that age.
Yep.
Today. I mean, Jen, when I started my career, I don't think I could even articulate like what I thought, what we're seeing now is possible. It's pretty cool to be in the industry. And, Jen, maybe next time we just like dive deeper into like AI, and I know we haven't caught up in a while, but I think we could take this biotech AI conversation so much further, and I'd love to get your thoughts on another episode if you're up for that.
Absolutely. It's game changing. I'm fired up about it. Like, this is every day, like our product roadmap and the pursuits and the engineers that we're hiring. Like, and the partners that we work with, our customers and our design partners that are helping with this. It's phenomenal. It's going to really, really help accelerate this entire industry.
Completely agree. I mean, amazing times, and it's going to evolve a lot more quickly than probably we all think, even beyond here.
Let's go.
Let's do it. All right. Next time, Biotech AI drill down. I can't wait to have you back on, Jen, but thanks for joining us today. And yeah, we'll talk soon.
Thank you for having me, Jotham. This was a lot of fun.
Same here. Take care.
Thanks for stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want more information, please check us out at gapify.com, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.